Hey, what's up guys? JB here with another future look into the JP side of War of the Visions. Now, until recently with Ibarra, lightning as an element has not really been well known for its magical prowess, which is kind of ironic when you think about it and the iconic fixture in Final Fantasy of Ramuh. But that's something that's set to change in a big way very soon. So today I wanted to look at a couple of units in particular that are set to change the face of the lightning element and its capabilities, and are part of an overall trend on the JP side that I wanted to highlight. So let's get right into it. Enter two new 90 cost units in Reznik and Queen, both set to be released in about 2.5 to 3 months. Reznik is in line to become our first permanent unit in the general pool since Farm, while Queen should be a free get from the Persona 5 collaboration. So let's actually see what these two units are bringing to the table. And let's start with Reznik. First looking at her TMR, I do like this one. It offers another in a long line of options when we're looking at mitigation buffs. This time providing a 10% resist to all damage types. Nice that this one can stack and layer with other popular mitigation buffs out there. Things like a Mashari TMR or Yuna's Clothes. And the interesting thing here is that it's a targetable cross AoE with up to 3 range. So it could be useful in autoplay if you want to have a support buff but don't want to bunch up your units, or in manual play if you want to get that buff in from a range but actually sit in place and conserve CT by not moving. From a stats perspective, highlights for Reznik include a very solid magic stat, strong base slash resist at 15%, and a decent starting agility. And I do actually list poison resist as a positive here as well. Now, until recently, poison wasn't really a status that we were too concerned about, but it's suddenly become a lot more in vogue on the global side with the recent release of More the Merrier. On the more negative side, Reznik's hit points, while kind of in line with other support units like Aerith or Yuna or even Ayaka, at 3179 is definitely on the lower end and will put her in danger of being one-shot, particularly if we're considering pierce or even magical damage. As you can see, she starts with negative base resistances in those damage types. We can also see with her dex and luck values that accuracy is going to be very much a concern for her. A very modest dex value here, and at 204 luck, it's definitely one of the lower values we've seen to date, in the EX era. Now moving into passives. And I'm really only seeing one real viable build path for her here, and that's with her Devout passive, Solid Knowledge, and the Thief's Lore passive. Now, Solid Knowledge is providing her a very nice 15 base defense and spirit, and with an EX upgrade is actually adding on another 15 area of effect resistance on top. So very nice overall damage mitigation passive here, and will potentially pull her out of that one-shot territory, which is very nice. While Thief's Lore is going to give her that 12% agility and additional mobility. Now, Thief's Lore may be something that you look to turn on or off depending on the mode of play that you're in. From the manual side, mobility and agility are king, so I really see that as an always on for her in that arena. However, in the auto environment, that additional mobility may put her in the line of fire due to the AI's penchant for sort of always advancing forward towards the enemy. So once we actually see how her AI works, it may be something that you may or may not use. She does actually have a lot of different buffs available to her, so it may not be as much of a concern for Reznik. In terms of her counter abilities, she does get access to Auto Cure, which while it's not an Aeon bond, it's still a very nice to have when it kicks in, and will help her sustain attacks on the battlefield and then help her keep going. So, and with her magic value, this will definitely heal her up to full and will be very nice when it triggers. Now, Reznik is a Devout main job and something that we've seen previously with Minwu. And if you haven't really played too much with Minwu, this job is really all about buffing. So first up, her Teaching of Thunder is one that gets an EX upgrade for her, and rather than adding more offensive power to it like it did in Minwu's case, it's actually a more defensive style buff in that it adds 25 single target resistance on top of the offensive capabilities it provides initially. Now, lightning as an element has had sort of an elemental theme, I would say, going with area resistance. So mixing in this single target resistance on top of that, I feel really synergizes well and can help you potentially cover all your bases there. So I do like that one. Second, she gets Teaching of Self-Preservation, which is a targetable 20 defense and spirit buff, while also adding 30 healing power to herself on top of it. I really like this buff when I've used it in the past on Minwu, though I really do wish that it was one that was instant cast. Next up, she gets Law of Invigoration, which I really think is a marquee skill when we're considering the Devout class. It combines a very nice instant cast Curata heal with a massive 25% agility and 40% attack and magic buff. I've used this a ton on Minwu, and I'm a big fan of this skill, so it's nice to see that Reznik has this one as well. On her job 25, she gets a range 4 targetable 50% physical barrier, and it actually is also providing herself 6 hate down. Now again, as I've said before, barriers are really not what they used to be in War of the Visions, but this is still a very nice option to have, and kind of stealing a little bit of what Cecil brings to the table actually, but with none of the drawbacks. Now lastly, her limit break, and this is kind of, I would say, a super Ayeko limit break here with the sort of extra potent 310% heal and that large diamond area of effect. But on top of this, this one is actually dispelling any debuff that the units within it have. Things like imperils or breaks, those are going to be, whisked away when she casts this on them. On top of that, it's actually going to be boosting up the target's attack and magic values by 40% as well. So pretty nice buff here in that you're not only going to get healed up to full, but you're getting very nice utility on top of that. And this has, as you can see here in the graphic, a potential 5 range on it too, so that'll definitely help keep Reznik back, sort of protected from enemy line of fire, and then help her to keep sustaining the team. From a sub-job perspective, she gets Arithmetician and Thief, and I'm not going to dive too deeply into these ones here. These are jobs that have been in the game for a very long time, and I think that most of us are pretty familiar with. I will say though that the Arithmetician class is the clear choice if you want to have access to some magical damage, or even some longer range healing. While Thief I see as more of a nice option for manual or class match play, since Reznik with that 4 movement and access to both Steel Heart and Steel Time can present a really unique backline threat that the enemy would definitely have to respect as they advance towards you. So that's Reznik's kit, and as we saw, she's absolutely stellar when it comes to supporting the team. She has that incredible instant cast healing capability and an assortment of team buffs that she brings. And that's really a first when it comes to the lightning element. We haven't yet really seen any other unit within lightning that brings such a dedicated support kit. Now, for manual play, I also really love that charm threat that she brings with that Thief kit and adding that extra dimension for her. On the more negative side, this is a unit that will absolutely struggle in hitting any unit that's even moderately evasive. And outside of the calculator sub-job, she's really lacking in any damaging attacks anyway. So when looking at what she brings as a supporter as well, I think that she has pretty much everything that you need. But a glaring omission there is a lack of access to any raise or full life skill. And I think you really have to think about that when you're building your team. Is that something that you can get by without? And it may make her better suited for supporting, tankier or bulkier units who are not susceptible to being one-shot by the enemy. Now, lastly, and maybe more of an auto-centric concern is, as a unit with so many nice support options, you're going to have to tune this unit and really dial her in by turning skills on or off to get her to play exactly how you want her to, similar to other heavy support units we've seen in the past like Aerith. At the end of the day though, this is a permanent, no pressure to pull unit in my opinion, and one I definitely won't be sad at all to get down the road on an off banner, but maybe not one that I will pull hard for on day one. Next up, Queen from Persona, and Queen's TMR is decent enough. It's a one-use team Spirit Pen buff of 20 for 3 turns. Now Spirit Pen is something that we'll see that Queen is really lacking in her kit, and could be something that you look to use for, in certain Queen builds. So more on that later, but Spirit Pen on a TMR is not something that we've actually seen too often, so it could definitely have some other applications in other teams as well. For stat highlights, right off the bat, her hit points are a huge asset for her, topping out at just over 4,400, so definitely sitting firmly in that bruiser class. For damage resists, she's more or less, neutral across the board here, give or take 5. But where she's really shining is that magic resist, getting a strong 20% base resistance. She does also have 4 defense and 8 spirit right out of the box, so pretty decent mitigation there all around. For cons, again, we have a very low dex value here for Queen. No base crit either, so unlike some other units we've seen in Lightning, this is definitely not a unit that you'll be able to rely on to get you that sort of clutch crit and finish somebody off. Her luck is okay at just over 240, but the combination of that dex and luck together is definitely going to have her somewhere in the middle of the accuracy index, and is something that we'll definitely have to keep in mind when we're building her out. The other thing I really want to point out here is that her attack and magic values, well, very interesting that they're sort of balanced for both. When actually comparing these values against other units out there, these values are just very, very low, especially that attack value at 370, which, it's very, very rare in the EX era that we've seen units at under 400 attacks, so it's definitely going to be a point of concern for her and her damage output. The last thing that I'll note here is this Doom resistance, and this is just a status that we never ever see, not since back in the day with Ziza and like the Charm Doom strats. So really this is a rough one to really have one of your major status resists dedicated towards, and definitely a knock for her in my opinion. When diving into Queen's kit and her support abilities, I found that this is a unit that actually has a lot of different potential build options. One option might be a maximum bruiser build, and for that I'd use the main job passive for the attack and magic and defense penetration, as well as the pugilist passive for that HP and attack. Maybe a more balanced build would be to opt for her main job passive and that 20 accuracy passive, kind of giving her a little bit of both. Lastly, you might consider this range 2 option from her gunner passive, and within her gunner passive she does also have access to aimed fire, so she can be used as a proper range unit. She can get up to 8 range, which is very, very, very solid. For counters, she does have a physical reflex, and I think that's going to be her best option. Now into Queen's abilities, and the first thing that I'll note here is that across her kit she's going to have access to 3 different damage types, and some are going to be physical and some are going to be magical, kind of giving a nice use to that blend of attack and magic that we saw earlier in her stats. Now first off, her sort of low AP spam attack that she has here is a range 3 magic attack, and before the damage it brings a 30 spirit and 39% magic break to the target, and this is definitely going to be useful in setting up the magical side of her kit. As we noted, she doesn't have any sort of spirit penetration innately, so this is going to provide some very nice synergy as well if you were to put Queen beside another magical attacker, somebody like Renan or Ibarra. The next highlight here is another magical attack, and that's actually coming from her main job sub. And you'll have to forgive me here because I don't know exactly how they're going to translate these abilities when they actually give her global release. So I'm just doing my best here to sort of describe them for you. But this ability has a nice 185% mod, but more importantly, before the damage comes in, it does a re-raise dispel. Very, very nice thing to have access to when you consider a unit like More the Merrier, just recently released on global, that has that re-raise, or in our very short future, Locke from the Final Fantasy VI collaboration. And also very nice that re-raise is done before the damage, so she doesn't actually have to hit the target for that re-raise to be dispelled. Very, very nice when you consider how evasive Locke is and how hard he is to hit. The next one here is actually a physical striking attack, and this one you can see is a range 3 cross AoE with 165% mod that also has a 25% chance to stun the targets, so that's already pretty strong on its face. But the really nice thing here is that before that damage is applied, it's actually buffing her up for 40% accuracy, and that accuracy lasts her for 3 turns as well. So very high accuracy buff that she gets here, and it's going to go a long way in helping her to deal with the various evade units out there. You can imagine stacking that along with her 20 accuracy passive that she has, and maybe an accuracy accessory, and suddenly Queen can certainly be built in a way to very handily deal with evade units. Queen also gets a very nice AoE general barrier break, and again that effect is coming pre-damage, and again this is a general barrier break, so this is going to kill any type of barrier, whether it's physical or magical or a blend of both, and that's actually pretty unique in War of the Visions. It's you know, as far as I've looked around and studied other units, it's not something that I've seen before. You know, generally on units, when they have a barrier break, it's applying only to like a physical damage or magical damage type barrier. So pretty cool that that she gets that. Last thing here is her limit break, and this is a range 4 200% mod, you know, single target attack, and it's applying a 25% lightning imperil before the damage. So this is yet another way that Queen can sort of amp up her own damage or her team's damage. And although this is not a full strength 38% imperil here, it's still very, very nice. It also has a secondary effect in that it also applies haste onto Queen, so helping her move herself up a bit in the turn order. So I really think this LB is pretty good, and I like it quite a bit. Now, just for the sake of time, I'm not going to sort of highlight all of these buffs that you can see here, but pretty nice, you know, overall utility for Queen, especially when equipping her main job sub. You know, that's going to actually give her access to this Curaga equivalent heal, which, you know, with her base magic value, I think should be able to actually output decent healing. So, you know, nice sort of backup option for you to have. So as we sort of saw there in the skills overview, this is a really flexible unit in the terms of the different capabilities and damage types that she brings to the battle. In terms of a role for your team, I don't think that this is a unit that will really be wowing us with her damage. She's more of like an all-around choice and a team enabler that sort of chips in and does decent enough damage. She'll also be sitting firmly in that bruiser class, especially when we're considering any sort of magical scaled attacks coming her way. Her main job also brings some really nice supportive aspects like that re-raise dispel and the Curaga heal that we highlighted. On the negative side, the trade-off for all of this flexibility is that she's kind of a jack-of-all-trades kind of unit and master of none, so maybe not excelling truly in any one area. If you're going for that magical build that we mentioned, she's also lacking in any sort of innate penetrations to support that, so could potentially be shut down by any sort of stout tanks or bruisers out there. Now, as I mentioned, her damage will definitely not be among the top tier. You know, we saw that her attack and magic values are very low end. You know, she's also a little bit lacking when it comes to mobility and range as well, topping out at just 4 range. Unless, of course, you opt for her gunner sub, which, you know, would actually give her very nice range in that case. I will say, though, that at first glance, you know, this unit sort of seemed to be just a little bit underwhelming to me when I was comparing her to other free units that we've received in the past. You know, she's definitely not Cecil tier, but I was initially thinking that maybe she was a step below, you know, Tidus or 9S or even Tifa's power level when they were initially released. But as I sort of studied the kit more and dived in further, I think it's really interesting how many different ways that you can viably build this unit, whether it's for strike or for missile or magic attack, and how there are options within the lightning element which will, you know, she could fit in and be supported by any of those different you know, builds. So that adaptability, I think, can be really nice to have in some cases, and may make her even more useful in a manual setting where your opponents are blind picked. You know, that said, assuming that we follow the JP side, you know, this is going to be a free get unit, and, you know, free, as they say, is free. So, you know, if nothing else, she's certainly going to be a very nice counter versus, you know, Celeste and Astoria, who are going to be coming in the very short future. So this is the direction that Lightning is headed over the next couple months, and, you know, obviously we already have Ibarra here, and I'm sure she's going to be returning, you know, next month in our next global festival. And I'm sure there's probably some players out there that are maybe kicking themselves over missing her the first time. You know, she ended up being maybe a little bit better than some people first anticipated, and she hits like an absolute truck. So, but, you know, as you can see here, you know, we're going to be getting Renan, you know, very soon as well. You know, he's our next Warrior of the Crystal and should be coming in the next few weeks. So there will be no shortage of options here very, very soon when we're talking about lightning magic. You know, remember, we also have, you know, low-cost Silma potentially as well for cost-restricted areas. But another thing lightning magic parties have really been missing to this point is strong vision cards to really amp up and support their power. But Europa here is really going to change that in a big way. It obviously it's providing these very nice vision card abilities, but it's also giving a very nice lightning Esper as well with very nice agility on top. But both the Europa and Solar vision cards I have pictured here, I think, have very nice value outside of just lightning magic. Now you can see the secondary effects here could be very beneficial for even mixed damage parties as well. I mean, just look at Europa here with 8% agility and 25% crit damage. And, you know, as we know, the lightning cast is one of the best when it comes to reliably critting. So it's actually quite insane when you consider this vision card as an effective 60 modifier on a crit for lightning magic attack. It's going to be very, very nice for Ibarra and, you know, frankly, quite scary as well. The Salir Vision card has that nice 10 area resist bestowed, so that could be very nice on a unit like Queen or Resnick, and maybe stack with the Ibarra Vision card to get a very nice area resist total. The other kind of interesting thing about this card is that it has a very balanced attack magic base stat on it, so it makes it perfect for a hybrid threat like Queen, or really as just like a general use card for anyone in the lightning cast, so I do like that one as well. So this massive buildup of magical lightning sort of culminates with these two units we've been discussing and their vision cards, and it's really opening up a lot of different potential build options, you know, within the lightning elements. You know, to this point, lightning has always been sort of known for the, you know, the gunner and missile units, or maybe even the more bruiser playstyle of units like 9S or even Cloud, but Ibarra and Renan and then these two units, you know, they really open up that magical side that mascot Ramuh has really been known for. The thing that I really like though about Resnick and Queen is that not only do they work really well in sort of the lightning magical teams, but I think that they really easily can slot in and support any of the existing playstyles that lightning has built up so far and fit very nicely. I did put together a couple of mock build ideas in the JP Builder, so if you're interested in checking those out, I will drop those links in the description below. Just some sort of early ideas that I was thinking about, but I think we'll actually need to get all these things and play around with it a little before we can really come up with the most optimal builds, but you know, definitely check those out and see what you think. So here's what we can look forward to in terms of actually adding any of these pieces to our roster over the next couple of months. You know, assuming we follow the JP timeline, we're looking at Renan and Europa in early March, with the GL Fest rerun for another chance at Ibarra, most likely right before the 2nd anniversary or potentially even alongside the anniversary. We'll then go into April, and towards the end of that month we should get the Persona 5 collaboration with Queen. You know, and then we should see Resnick and the Salir Vision card that we mentioned a few weeks after that in May. And that will sort of conclude this massive buildup of the lightning element. I think though that the big question on everybody's mind is, you know, when are we actually going to see this guy here, you know, the Thunder God himself? Unfortunately, everybody's hopes were crushed in the JP livestream over the weekend, and a Tactics return is still very much in a holding pattern. Maybe something they're holding for the 3rd anniversary, when no doubt they implement the next Awakening level or mechanic to force us to have to invest more into building up the units. I'm sure whatever it ends up being though, it will probably be worth the wait, you know, when it comes to Final Fantasy Tactics. So I know that there's a lot of Lightning players out there, and you know, this one was specifically for you. I think the way that they've chosen to build up the certain elements or even certain aspects of the elements is really interesting, and is something that was fun to dive into here today. You know, personally, I think that our ability to look ahead into the JP timeline is probably our biggest asset as global players, to be able to plan out and, you know, which elements or units that we might be interested in saving for. So I always try to take advantage of that when I can. I hope these look aheads that I've been doing are helpful for you in that regard. But speaking of you know, have these new lightning mages that we looked at piqued your interest? You know, or are you sitting on Team Ibarra and chill? You know, let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You know, help us grow and be notified of my future videos. And that's it for today. So as always, stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one.